start in a few minutes, waiting for people to arrive. Welcome to this event. I'll be introducing it in a few minutes. All right. I suggest that we start. People may come bit by bit. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to this event. Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Okay. Well, as you all may know or not, but I believe you do know because you're here, loss and damage is a very burning issue at this COP. It has been burning actually for 30 years, but now we finally start to talk about it. We're very much about technicalities, political games here, but I think it's very important to remind you that we're also talking about people's life. And that's also why we wanted to have this event today, is to talk about concretely what do loss and damage mean on the ground. You probably also know that climate displacement is actually probably one of the most tangible issues when talking about loss and damage, with millions of people already being displaced everywhere because of global warming, and many more will be forced to leave their homes because of burning fossil fuels and warming up the earth. So it's obviously also a matter of human rights and social protection. As you also maybe know, there are different types of extreme weather events that can occur. So we have extreme weather events such as storms, floods, wildfire, droughts, landslides, and so on. But we also have what we call slow onset events that are more events that are happening on the longer term. And those events are less addressed. We talk less about those events, and that's why we wanted to bring a focus on that. So it's sea level rise, desertification, drying up of soils, and those maybe less tangible events are also actually extreme weather events and need also to be addressed and deserve concrete solution. So we will divide this event in three main sections. So first we want to discuss what are the gaps, the problem, and our amazing speakers will give different perspective to talk about that. And then we will do a second round of speeches to understand what are the solutions, what needs to happen on the ground regarding loss and damage, regarding climate displacement, and focusing specifically on slow onset events. And then, of course, you will have the floor. Don't hesitate to ask tricky questions, to debate, because it's also important. That's why side events are here. We are negotiating in some rooms, but you also have to have concrete discussion among people, and that's why we organize this event. So without further ado, I will invite the speakers to come and sit. You can maybe all come here, Mani, Emmanuel, and Tetet, so we are comfortable and we don't lose time by changing among us. We also have a speaker online who will probably appear on the screen now. Hi, Int. Thank you for being here. I'll introduce you in a minute. So we first start with our first speaker, Emmanuel Sec, who works as Enda Energy, based in Dakar. He is a program manager. He has considerable experience in leading programs on adaptation to climate change, climate finance, sustainable land management, and disaster risk management. He is currently a member of the UNFCCC Expert Group on Action and Support, of the WIM Executive Committee, and a member of the Global Board of the Global Network for Disasters Reduction, who is also organizing this event with us as a regional representative of West and Central Africa. Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, for this very well detailed introduction. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for the opportunity you gave to us to highlight one of the key issues of the negotiation here in Egypt, which is becoming the third pillar of this UNFCCC process. I mean the loss and damage issues. So we had opportunity to develop initiatives in Senegal named Multi-Actors Partnership on Climate and Disaster Risk Finance and Insurance. And the initiative we have undertaken there was aligned with the WIM, I mean the Warsaw International Mechanism, in three key objectives. The first one is to enhance the information and the knowledge. The third one is related to building capacity. The second one, is related to building capacity, and the third one is looking at the synergy where wherever we can build it. And also to meet one key challenges. One of the key challenges is related to how to better assess the loss and damage within the countries, at least to help countries to prioritize it within their different policies, their different strategies, particularly the national determined contributions. So our contribution was related to these issues, and be clear that when we are talking about loss and damage, every loss and damage is not related to climate change. There are some loss and damage that are taken through the Sendai framework in terms of disaster risk management. That's why we focus our studies, because we made studies. We had three main studies. The first one was related to the slow onset event. The second one was related to the approaches that are taking into account the slow onset event. And the third was related to the finance. And we said in Senegal, what will be the different prominent slow onset event in our countries. And from the studies we made, the prominent slow onset event in Senegal, as you said in your introduction, the sea level rise. And we know the consequences of the sea level rise in terms of residential destruction. Many hotels was lost because it is a key business in Senegal. And we have seen that ecosystem also was degraded and people was displaced, and I will come on to detail on these issues of displacement, particularly with the coastal erosion in our country, because Senegal, if you look at the position of our countries, is in a low altitude. That means that it is prone to coastal erosion from the big coast, because we have the big coast, we have also the little coast. So the Senegalese have a coastline of 700 kilometers that are really affected. So we have the sea level rise, we have the temperature raise that have impact often on the pluviometry of our country, I mean the rainfall. And if you have difficulties in terms of rainfall, that means that you may be affected by droughts, and these have impact in terms of agricultural productivity. We have the issue of salinization. In Senegal, for example, it is estimated between 1 million and 1.7 million hectares that are degraded in our countries. That means that it is used and it is affecting many regions in Senegal. So this is why we are trying to see what kind of activities that we can undertake, for example, in terms of adaptation, and Senegal had a chance to benefit from the adaptation fund, at least to reclaim some land, I mean by building the anti-salk dike, and also to have some sea walls where the city are affected. So we have some responses related to this effect, not only sea level rise, not only temperature rise and salinization, but also desertification and droughts. And talking about droughts, you certainly have enough informed about what happened, for example, in the Horn of Africa. And Senegal is a Sahelian country which is prone often to droughts, and this drought is affecting really the communities. So there are some responses given at the international level. I have talked about the adaptation fund. Senegal had 2 projects approved it by the adaptation fund. We had also a project approved by the Green Climate Fund that are related to the slow onset event, particularly the salinized land. We have institutional responses because there are some institutions that are set up at least to liaise or to deal with the disaster risk management. We have the Department of Civil Protection, which is dealing with that. We have also the Department of Environment and Sustainable Development, which is taking into account these issues related to loss and damage. We have some political measure. I have talked about the national determined contribution. We have also the NAPAS, and within the national determined contribution, what we are looking for and we are advocating is to have the loss and damage considered as a priorities by our countries. And then we have also the NAPAS, which is taking into account the issue of land degradation. We have financial measure, so the countries and particularly the communities are often the first respondent and in front line with all the disaster that they are facing. So we have some funds that were set up at least to respond urgently where a disaster comes. That's why we reiterate our call here in the conference to have facilities that may help at least for where in the countries the funds are set up to supply or to feed this fund with the different resources that we may have, but that may have help the communities that are affected by the disaster to have quick responses. I mean, we need fast responses, we need quick resources to face with this urgent disaster that they often face at the country level. So we will deepen our initiative by interacting with localities in a participative assessment of risk. So this will be the next step after the different studies we've made to gather from these localities the way they see the loss and damage, what are the responses that were given by the institutions, and what would be also the appropriate responses or solutions they could expect, not only from the country, but also at the international level. So this is what I had in the beginning to share based on what we did related to the slow onset event in Senegal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. I'm sure in the second round of questions about solution, it will be very interesting to hear more about the communities' relation and how to build up solution from the ground up. I will now pass the word to our second speaker, who is In Assawi Benani, who is joining us online. Thank you for being here. Ind is a thematic specialist for the International Organization of Migration in West and Central Africa. She's also based in Dakar, where she's supporting the development of institution intervention of migration, environment, and climate change. She has a degree in aquaculture and practical sciences in agriculture. She worked for the trade union of peasants in France and supporting small farmers and youth in accessing water, land, media, and courts. She is now sitting in Dakar's IOM regional office for West and Central Africa since mid-2018, and she mobilizes her experience to stimulate collaboration, advise decision makers, and develop concrete action and nature-based solutions, taking into consideration, obviously, human mobility and environmental rights of host communities. Hind, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. It's kind of frustrating not being here to shake the hands of the esteemed panelists who are obliged to I'm speaking in your back, I'm really sorry. And also not to see the audience, and I'm sure I'm kind of oversized. So I'll do my best to have a balanced, to have a balanced perspective compared to the panelists, even though I'm oversized. So now your first question, Rebecca, is about the main trends and the gaps, if I understand well. So at global level, in 2021, disasters led to 23.7 million internal displacement, according to our colleagues from the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center. And in 2050, according to the famous Groundswell report from the World Bank, 216 million people across 6 regions could move within their countries. We are talking about, the two main common points here are the word internal. So it's very important also to say that the huge majority of human mobility triggered by climate change is first and foremost internal. I'm speaking, so as you said, from Dakar. I'm covering West and Central Africa, and here in the region, an estimated 88% of migration flows in the region in 2022 were internal to the region. Again, this is within the region that migration flows in general are occurring. As I won't repeat what Mr. Sek has just said, but just to say that from a regional perspective, the disasters such as floods, storms, and landslides triggered in 2021 around 265,000 IDPs, internally displaced persons, which stands for around 3% of total IDPs in West and Central Africa. But as you said, Rebecca, these figures do not consider human mobility induced by slow onset events like land degradation, desertification, water scarcity, or sea level rise. And these are major trends in the region I cover, as Mr. Sek said. And these figures do not consider immobility. Trapped person induced by climate change and also by other factors such as conflict, who are impacting also the capacity of mobility of people and therefore their capacity of adaptation. Climate change in the region I cover threatens food production, the means of subsistence, and the agricultural income of rural households. In a region where agriculture represents 30 to 50% of the GDP in most countries. And what is important to us as IOM is that these agricultural sectors heavily relies on labor migration. And this is a reality of migration that we generally overlook labor migrants in agriculture. They do contribute, I mean, to heavily, massively to our economies, to the resilience of our society. So it's very important when we talk about agriculture in the context of climate change. It's extremely important also to consider the labor force that is behind. So as I said, it plays a vital role in the region, as transhumance does also. Here also there are challenges related to human mobility. Human mobility has always been a strategy of adaptation to climate change or to environmental changes, let's say, and then climate change puts these categories of population at the forefront of climate change. When I say these categories of population, I'm talking about pastoral communities, but also labor migrants in agriculture, but it can be also in fisheries. I mean, Senegal is a big nation of fishermen, and so, yeah, I mean, it's very, I mean, also mining, let's say. So, I mean, I will stop here for the trends, but in terms of gap, very, very quickly, I would say that I was thinking of your question yesterday, and I would, I mean, enumerate several gaps that we identify as practitioners on the ground. So the first gap, I mean, let's say, is the finance gap. Definitely, this gap, the finance gap at community level. The communities that are the most vulnerable and also the most, let's say, resilient to climate change, they do develop a lot of practices in terms of resilience and adaptation. They have the less access to funds. So it's very important also that we address this, but there are several steps to be able to address these gaps. The policy gap, people from the migration sector, let's say, and the environmental sector, they generally do not speak to each other, even within the same organizations, the same donor organizations, the same embassies, the same states, governments. So it's very important that we support that we facilitate the policy dialogue that can fill this gap, so that we can have like a dialogue between the people from the environmental sector and the migration sector. But it's coming more and more, and there are progress being done in this sense. And for example, the first climate strategy of ECOWAS that was published in July 2021 has human mobility in its the document, I mean, has human mobility in it. And I would say also that the narrative gap is very important. As I said, when I mean, speaking from West and Central Africa, when we talk about migration, we generally have a narrative that is easily biased, and definitely it's very important that we take this, let's say, opportunity of discussion on climate change to put, to fill this gap between the narrative, the general narrative, and the realities that are lived by the communities and the governments in the region. Last but not least, I would say the perception gap. We do not take into account as much as they deserve the perception of the communities on climate change. Instead of trying to sensitize communities on climate change, the very communities that are at the forefront of climate change, it's very important that we document their perception, and also that we document the solutions that they are being deploying, so that we also can feed the discourse and the discussions over loss and damages. I will stop here, and I'm happy to answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hind. That was super useful to also get the bigger picture. I will now give the floor to Ted Lauren, who is an advisor at the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, based in Manila, Philippines. Thank you for being here. Tetet is a development worker with 30 years experience in multidisciplinary and multicultural settings as at grassroots, national, regional, and international levels. She is a policy and advocacy expert on diverse thematics areas, including climate justice, sustainable development, financing for development, trade, human rights, gender, and women's rights, among others. And she has also served as co-chair in regional and global advocacy platform, and she has represented civil society in different advocacy arenas. You have the floor, Tete. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca, and good morning to all of us. First of all, I feel such pressure and responsibility to be talking about the situation and the problems of displaced communities because they are not here. They are largely absent in this space. So I feel the privilege, the honor, and the responsibility of, somehow representing them. I think that's the very first message that I would like us to remember in all of these discussions about the rights of displaced communities, of climate migrants. It should be, we should always be reminded of their saying, no, nothing about us without us. And I think that's one big, huge gap that this space at the UNFCCC is having, because everyone talks about migration, displacement, but where are the migrants? Where are the climate displaced communities in this space? So having said that, as early as 1990, the IPCC has already warned us that the greatest single impact of the climate crisis might be on human migration, with millions of people, particularly from the global south, experiencing both sudden and slow onset events. And we know that displacement and forced migration due to climate impacts is one of the key challenges across the globe. And it's very
I don't do. Yeah, I'm not touching.
okay, now that I have your attention.
It was a trick.
I think the number two message that I would like to share with all of us is that people who are displaced and forced to migrate are usually already in situations of vulnerability. No? So it's like they're already confronting fundamental issues of poverty, unemployment, landlessness, joblessness, and then when climate impacts hit them, that adds on another layer. So they are not just vulnerable because of climate impacts, they are already in situations of multiple vulnerabilities, so that when climate impacts hit them, then that is so catastrophic already. No? Those challenges that people who are forced to migrate, it happens before disaster occurs, but it's also multiplied, as they try to seek refuge and shelter to a higher ground. So many challenges, many horror stories that we've heard is actually during transit, in the process of getting displaced and relocated, and also multiple challenges when communities already find themselves lucky enough to reach their points of destination. So if they're lucky enough to be able to be relocated, then another host of problems confront them. Typically, problems involve issues around identity, because climate migrants are classed mostly as undocumented economic immigrants. I think that's also one thing that we do have to remember, because there is no legal recognition of climate migrants. Sometimes, or a lot of times, people who are displaced are classified as economic migrants, or labor migrants. So that brings with it a host of problems like xenophobia, social exclusion. Some of them are also criminalized because, of course, when you do not have papers, you easily get criminalized, no? And deprivation of social services. If you are lucky enough to be relocated, you are also confronted with a lot of challenges around the loss or absence of critical social support services. And so this whole problem of displacement due to the impacts of climate crisis is the first layer of injustice. They didn't have anything to do at all with, increased global house gas emissions, etc., but they're the ones facing the brunt. It's also an issue of injustice because they lack legal protection and status. There are no legally binding agreements obliging countries to support climate migrants. Their situation of temporary displacement usually becomes one of permanent displacement. So that's something that hasn't been fully addressed in these multilateral spaces. So I already talked about the lack of social protection systems, and because they are largely invisibilized. Now, they're invisible in many of these policy discussions. They're invisible in many data, information gathering situations. Now, are they economic migrants? Are they climate migrants? Are they climate refugees? We do not know because there is no systematized way of assessing just how many there are. So it would be very difficult to also determine what kind of actual support climate displaced communities face. Which brings me to my last point, and I think this is also why for many communities, many civil society here at the COP, the issue of establishing a loss and damage finance facility is very crucial, because we can talk all we want about the situation, but the real issue is there are no dedicated resources for addressing and supporting those communities already facing the harshest impacts. No? It goes beyond adaptation, and which is why we are urging parties here, what is the importance of establishing this loss and damage finance facility to support people already facing the worst impacts of the climate crisis. Thanks very much, Rebecca.
Thank you so much, Tetet. Despite some mic issues, it was very clear and super concrete as well. Our last speakers will also give us a very concrete view on what's happening on the ground. Mani Tahiru is coming right from Niger. He has a background in sociology and project management. He is working with NGO DEMI-A as a responsible of humanitarian resilience and climate change specialist. Mani will do his intervention in French, so I will translate it bit by bit. Bear with me, I'm not a professional translator, so I will do my best. But it's important to have voices from the ground, so we wanted to do it like this. Mani, you have the floor, je t'en prie. Je vais te traduire au fur et à mesure, comme on avait dit. Vas-y.
D'accord. Merci. Tout d'abord, je voudrais vous remercier de me donner l'occasion de parler du Niger, mon pays. Et moi, c'est Mani Tahiru, je travaille dans une ONG qu'on appelle Développement pour le Mieux-être, membre du réseau GNDR. Je vais vous parler un peu de mon pays, le Niger. Le Niger, d'abord, c'est un pays enclavé qui n'a pas de contact avec la mer. C'est un pays aux portes du Sahara, c'est un pays désertique à plus de 50%. Et c'est un pays qui subit de plein fouet.
So Mani is very happy to be here. He's part of the ONG, the NGO DEMI-A. He wants to talk today about the situation in Niger, which is a very landlocked country with no access to the sea. Food deficit country that belongs to the group of the least developed country and is very hard hit by climate change.
Merci Rebecca. Je vais continuer donc en parlant toujours du Niger. Donc je disais que le Niger n'est pas épargné par les phénomènes du changement climatique. Nous les subissons de plein fouet. Et nous sommes un pays pauvre classé parmi les derniers sur l'indice de développement humain. Et je le disais, donc nous subissons à travers nos champs, quand on prend le Niger, je disais, une bonne partie est désertique, plus de 50%, bien quand même nous avons une zone sud où nous pratiquons l'agriculture et l'élevage. Et c'est cette partie qui nourrit le Niger. Et quand on prend ces dernières années, le changement climatique vient remettre en cause à travers les inondations, à travers les... Vous allez... et voilà.
So, as he said, Niger is very hard impacted by climate change. So there are many droughts, and they have become actually permanent. There are floods. There is one region of Niger who is actually feeding the whole country. But now it's very hard to practice agriculture there. They also have suffered severe flooding, and that's have ravaged all the fields.
Les sécheresses sont devenues permanentes et les inondations ravagent tout sur leur passage. Quand je prends spécifiquement la région de Difa d'où je viens, pratiquement toute la bande sud et les villages sont carrément effacés.
There's a region where he comes from where like almost all villages have been erased.
6 communes sur 12 sont désertes et inhabitées du cause des faits des inondations.
6 out of 12 communes?
6 communes sur 12.
6 out of 12 communes, so small districts. Redis-moi, j'ai pas entendu.
6 communes sur 12 sont vidées de leur population. Des centaines de villages sont carrément effacés et les gens se sont déplacés vers les gros centres urbains et vivent dans des camps ou des sites spontanés.
Hundreds of villages has been displaced, and 6 out of 10 of the small districts are now empty because of the consequences of climate change.
Ces dernières années, nous avons suivi 3, 4 ou 5 années successives qui sont drastiques, qui ont faussé carrément les productions. Ce qui a conduit les jeunes le plus souvent à regagner les groupes terroristes ou les groupes du grand banditisme.
So many people that are being displaced actually flew through big city centers, big metropoles, and also young people are now more and more attracted to terrorist groups in this situation.
Les autres familles se sont déplacées, comme je le disais tantôt, et vivent dans des camps, dans des situations précaires, dans des abris précaires, exposés à tous les aléas climatiques.
The population now live in precarious housing, very precarious housing, and that are still confront to all the climate extreme events that could still occur and that occur more and more.
Ils vivent sans eau de qualité, sans abri décent, sans soins appropriés de santé.
They have no access to water, no no good housing, no health care.
Ces gens vivent une situation extrêmement précaire qui s'attaque de plein fouet à la dignité de la personne humaine.
This situation is very precarious and attacking the dignity of those people.
Les hommes ont presque perdu leur dignité parce qu'ils ne peuvent plus faire face aux dépenses de leur famille.
Men can no longer afford the needs of their family.
Et les femmes sont devenues, les femmes et les filles sont devenues l'espoir des ménages. Pourtant, cette dernière était carrément exclue de toute prise de décision dans les bons moments.
Women and girls are now the hope of those communities, while before they were totally excluded from taking any decisions.
C'est une situation extrêmement délicate et ils subissent encore les affres, les aléas. Ils sont inondés, ils sont en constant déplacement. Vous allez trouver un ménage avec 2 tentes ou 2 hangars où les filles sont le plus souvent obligées d'aller passer la nuit ailleurs parce que les conditions ne sont pas réunies.
people keep on being displaced, and so the situation is very delicate, very precarious, and not safe also for women and girls who have to sleep sometimes at other places because the place where they're displaced are not safe.
Et ceci les expose à la prostitution et au viol.
They are exposed to rape and prostitution.
Le texte que nous avons intervenu est que nous avons pu mener des études qui ont abouti à beaucoup de résultats dont certains ne sont pas bons à entendre.
And it's in this context that the NGO of Mani has operated and did many research that brought them to results that are not very pleasing to hear.
Donc je ne peux que vous dire ces quelques cas que je viens de vous citer.
He just wanted to share with us those very concrete cases for us to understand what it means on the ground, and then he will tell us more about the results and the solution in place.
Le projet a pu identifier les besoins humanitaires, ce qui a été fait et les gaps à combler.
So thanks to this project and research, they could really identify the gaps, the needs, and what was also needed regarding humanitarian aid.
Et voilà.
Ça va?
Nous avons envisagé aussi des solutions.
Ça, on en parle après.
Ok. Donc je crois que je vais m'arrêter ici
Okay.
pour répondre aux futures questions.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Mani. And excuse me all for the in immediate translation. That's not my job, so now I realize how complicated it is. So now that we set up a bit the gaps, the scene, the trends, I would like to give the floor again in the same order to our speakers for max 5 minutes, to now try to give some maybe hope and positivism in the discussion to understand what could actually happen regarding those terrible and disastrous situations. I totally understand that we are not talking today, or Mani is maybe one of the most closest voice to the communities with Tetet, but we need to also need what needs to happen on the ground, and what can we do here with our governments or NGOs or organization, researcher to help this problem go forward. So Emmanuel, I will give you the floor again to talk about solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was good at least to allow people to see the image of the double vulnerability that the communities are suffering. When you see that some peoples are obliged to take small boats to cross to developed countries because they did not have hopes in their countries, this means a lot of things. And if you look at where these people, many people came from, it is more or less in dry lands or desert areas. Solutions are there. Solutions are there, and as civil society, we are trying to do to give some solution in terms of adaptation or some option. If you look at, for example, for the coastal people that are affected by the sea level rise, in the little coast of Senegal, what we start doing there is to link up the different municipalities within an approach that we call the intercommunal. Intercommunal is linking the different municipalities to deal with the coastal erosion, because we know that only one municipality which is affected by coastal erosion could not give the solution. Or if they start giving solution or developing solution, it may create maladaptation elsewhere. I just give the example of Rufus, where we have some protection of the localities. So we have seen that this had impact in another cities named Barni. And I think that combining or linking the different municipalities around some key aspect, for example, the issue related to the coastal erosion is really important for us. The second thing is to deepen the analysis. I mean, coming with scientific evidence. It's what we are trying to do with the communities that we've select. I mean the fishing communities in Getndar, Sali, Joal, and also those who are close to the Salum Delta, to look at with them. I mean, we co-construct. This is what we call social engineering, is to build with the communities the solutions together. And to look at, to analyze what kind of solution that were given to them, and if there is limit to this solution, how we could improve the process. And if, for example, the non-economic loss and damage was enough taken into account, because sometimes these issues of non-economical losses is forgotten. I mean the religious or the worship and the cultural one. When some people are displaced from an area where they live centuries, 100 years, and they're obliged to go to another areas where they don't have the roots, this means that they lost their culture, and religiously they lost the link with their people. And we are trying to see how we could find a solution related to it, but more appropriate solution that we will co-construct with them. So we will not come and just give the solution. In other areas, I mean the dry areas, we are trying to see how to value some chain, like the milk value chain. When we have set up some small units to collect and to chill the milk, because during the rainy season in our life, in our areas, we see that there is a lot of production of milk, which is sometimes waste because people don't know how to value it. So we have set up it in some area in the north of Senegal, in the south of Senegal, some small unit, which are working with solar panel at least to give localities that never be electrified electricity, and also to help them at least to chill their milk. We value the milk through the market. They have access to market because we value it through yogurts and also cheese. And we have a brand already. The brand is named Debo, for those who are speaking Fulani. It's mean women. So this is, you can, if you have opportunities to come in Senegal, you could at least test this yogurt that we are producing with communities. So these are small solutions that I gave that need to be scaled up, because if we are talking about impact with good practices, because there are very good practices, so we expect from the resources that should come from the adaptation fund or the Green Climate Fund to allow communities to scale up their best practices of what we are doing on the ground as pilot, or just to allow them to, strengthen their resilience.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting also to bring non-economic losses, because I think it's a very important part of the debate also when we talk about displacement, and also good to amplify the fact that solutions are there but need to be scaled up at a level that's actually answering the emergency. Inde, would you like to pick on that and maybe give us your views and solutions?
Thank you very much, Rebecca. I was wondering how we cannot keep stick to the 5 minutes. I mean, it is because a lot of things remain to be done, and it's very hard to answer those questions in a very short time, but I'll try. So, yeah, I mean, first of all, it's very important to have a solution-oriented approach, definitely. It's not about being positive or negative. This is about, I mean, finding solutions and also, I mean, being able to cope with with the challenges. So, and having a people-centered approach of climate change, definitely, it's. I mean, I don't think there is a need to demonstrate this. I mean, at least in this room, but it's extremely important. And what human mobility brings to the debates and the discussions of our climate action is about, giving a human face to what's happening, exactly as you said at the beginning, Rebecca. And also having this, what we all call in our world an integrated approach. It means that we need to de-silo, to de-specialize, and also acting at different levels at the same time in a coordinated way is extremely important. It's about, let's say, principles and methodologies. So what is our approach for IOM? So we do have this integrated approach articulated around three pillars. So first of all, at strategic level, what we do is creating or designing or supporting the design and the development of solutions to people, for people to move, solutions for people on the move, and solutions for people to stay. So these are the three different, areas of solutions that we support the development of. And to do so, the integrated approach that we promote is articulated around three pillars. First one is knowledge production, the second one is policy work, and the third one is the community-based action. So when we say knowledge production, it's about also, I don't think that, there is the need of having all the figures to be able to act, but at the same time, we need to produce evidence because every situation has its context, has its specificity, so it's very important to keep on producing the knowledge. And this knowledge needs also to be, and that's the approach that we are promoting in Western Central Africa, this knowledge production has to be solution-oriented and perception, as I said, oriented. So we do inform ourselves on what is the perception of the communities and also the governments of the impacts of climate change on their lives, their livelihoods, their ways of life, not just to tick the participatory box, but to inform policies and also to inform the debates over loss and damage. The policy work, it's at different levels. So here we have the regional economic communities like ECOWAS or ECAS for West Africa and for Central Africa, so that we also promote the policy dialogue with, within this, what we call this RECs, regional economic communities, so that people from the climate change sector or division or directorates and people from the migration divisions speak to each other and design solutions and approaches together. And at local level, I definitely, I think I've not talked about urbanization in the region and also on the continent. We are living here in the region unprecedented rates of urbanization, and this urbanization overlaps with climate change challenges like floods, like also sea level rise, coastal erosion, and the cities have also today, and it will aggravate in the future, will have to a key role to play when it comes to climate resilience, but also in the integration of population. So they need support to manage the urbanization rates, as I said, but also floods, sea level rise, and the integration of migrants and also of internally displaced persons. I mean, in Niger, Niamey, or in Ouagadougou, Tenkodogo in Burkina Faso, or in Bamako in Mali, urban centers and capitals have to deal with a lot of challenges, not to speak about conflict. And in terms of solutions at community-based action, what is important to realize is that people from the, for example, from the Sahelian countries, they haven't expected us to adapt. They are already adapting. And migration is one of the adaptation strategy they deploy. And it's very important to be extremely humble when we, work at community level, and also to document the adaptation practices that are already in place, and also to support the development of nature-based solutions at community level, so that they also can inform local development policies, but also policies at more national and regional level. Just to let you know that UNOWAS and Ireland, the Republic of Ireland and of Ghana have published a call to action in April, last April. If you Google call to action UNOWAS, you will find it. UNOWAS is the UN Office for West Africa and the Sahel. And there are a lot of areas of intervention, also recommendations that we can also build on, that can also guide us to understand better what we can do to address what we call the climate security issues. And just also to mention about the role of women in these solutions, exactly as my esteemed panelists said before, we shouldn't forget women. We made this study in Niger about migration, environment, and climate change in Niger, and definitely the role of women is extremely important, despite a lot of, let's say, inequality gaps or gender inequality gaps. And they live a triple burden. The findings of this study show that they live a triple burden because of climate change, and I'm specifically talking about women in rural areas. The first burden is that their daily tasks, the performance of their domestic activities is made even harder because of lack of access to natural resources like wood and water, but also women left behind because of migration of men in the context of climate change have the double burden of let's say the agricultural activities and their domestic activities, but also women migrate more and more because of climate change. And these women, they go to urban centers, and generally they also work in what we call the care sector. And it's very important also, like for labor migrants, coming from rural areas vulnerable to climate change, to give value and to highlight the essential role that these women play in taking care of our societies, and also giving an economic value to the economic value that they deserve, and also provide with the protection gaps their protection needs. So I think it's very important that also we have like this lens of looking at the most invisible and the human capital of these invisible categories. The last point I will make, I'm sorry, I'm super long, the last point I would like to make is that also we are in Central America leading a project, my colleagues there are leading a project with women, through migrant women, and thanks to the support of Luxembourg, we are in the Benedict's pavilion, so I have to say it. And the migrant women are also included into some key policy discussions. So I wanted to make this point on women because we generally overlook that part of the population. Thank you very much. Sorry for having been long.
No problem.
Again.
Thank you. I was not sure if my mic was working or not, so thank you. Thank you very much for having indeed brought the woman situation because it's in the invisible people that are maybe the most invisible sometimes, so it's very important to have also that flagged very concretely. So thank you so much for that, and sorry to not allow you more than 5 minutes, but that's my constraint. Tete, do you want maybe to pick up on that? I'm sure you have many things to tell us.
We've heard a lot already in terms of proposals and recommendations. So I think we do know what the solutions are. What's important now is how to connect those dots. Now, because everyone says, we know the problems, we know it's important to find genuine, lasting solutions to it. So why are we not connecting the dots? Now, for instance, in another space, there was an International Migrants Review Forum that was held a few months ago in New York, talking about, what are the different frameworks that would advance the rights-based protection of migrants. And there's also different statements in that Migration Review Forum that recognizes climate change as a driver of migration. So that's good, no? And here at the UNFCCC, we all talk about displacement, etc., etc. So why aren't we connecting those dots so that there could be actual services and responses that would really deliver, on the rights-based protection of displaced communities? When you talk to the IMRF, they're saying, oops, that is not our mandate. When you talk to the UNFCCC, oops, that is also not our mandate. So that's one big question mark for me right now. Everyone says it's important to avert, minimize, address, but when it comes to who's actually responsible, people are, pointing fingers at each other. So we can't find solutions if no one is going to be accountable and responsible for actually taking this forward. So I also hear a lot of solutions on at the ground level. While it's important, I think the necessity of linking the micro, the meso, and the macro level, that is somehow lost to many, not connecting those dots. Because usually, solutions at the community level are being promoted as positive things, and rightly so, but you cannot just scale up and replicate. Now, it's not a magic bullet that solution X that worked in community X can just be replicated and scaled up, and that will already solve the problem of displaced communities. Now, we know that development is special and unique with its different contexts. So I'm saying that we do need those grassroots solutions, but we also need solutions or signals that will come at the global level. So here at the COP, I think it's important to always be reminded that as long as rich countries don't fulfill their mitigation commitments, we will always have increasing and intense impacts of climate change. As long as countries do not support adaptation commitments, we will always have that problem. And as long as loss and damage finance is still absent as the third pillar of climate action that should be resourced, we will forever face the problem of, local authorities not having enough resources, national governments not having enough resources for a rights-based agenda for climate migrants. So for me, it's important that we get to talk about this, but it's also important among us that we are able to see not only the big picture, but probably a pathway to connect those dots so that we are more effective in responding to the issue and the need of protecting the rights of climate-displaced communities. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Tedet. Woo! That was very efficient. Thanks. Now I will give Manny the floor to conclude this last round and then give you the floor in case you have questions, remarks, suggestions maybe. So Manny, je t'en prie, je me prépare à traduire. Vas-y.
Ok, merci beaucoup. Je vais parler des solutions. Donc, comme je le disais tantôt, nous sommes une ONG, membre du réseau GNDR. Et dans ce contexte, que nous avons eu un appui d'un projet qui s'appelle Rendre les déplacements plus sûrs.
So the Mani's NGO is member of GNDR and they have put in place a project called Make Displacement Safer. Je crois que c'est ça.
Dans le cadre de ce projet, nous avons mené quelques actions. Dans un contexte où tout est priorité, Donc, dans les priorités, il faut savoir identifier les priorités.
In this project, we have identified different solutions and action. In a context where everything has to have priority, you have to decide which are the most priority things.
C'est ainsi que nous avons commencé par la cartographie des acteurs, la cartographie des aléas, la cartographie des risques.
We started by mapping actors, events, risks.
Cela nous a permis d'identifier. Nous avons essayé ce qu'on appelle les laboratoires de vie urbaine. C'est une démarche que nous avons expérimentée tout au long de ce projet. Cette démarche nous a permis d'identifier ce qui a été fait par les différents acteurs, ce qui reste à faire, c'est-à-dire les gaps.
We set up a communitarian laboratory to really identify what was already actually happening and be able then to identify concretely the gaps.
Donc c'est comme cela que nous avons commencé par le commencement, c'est-à-dire que nous avons commencé par établir des pièces d'état civil aux personnes déplacées, car c'est la condition sine qua non pour avoir accès à tout service.
We gave civil registration documents to people that were displaced to enable them to access social services, basic social services and employment.
Cela nous a permis d'établir 3000 pièces d'état civil à des femmes et des jeunes sur un site qui s'appelle Awaridi.
That could be done for 3,000 young people and women.
Voilà. Et nous avons essayé d'analyser les lois et les stratégies nationales pour voir les gaps à ce niveau. Cela nous a permis de comprendre que il y a une loi au Niger qui est spécifique sur les personnes déplacées. Donc nous avons... Oui.
We also identify policy and measures in place at the national level to identify what could be used and advocate. And by doing so, they realized that there was actually a law regarding displaced people in Niger.
Voilà, donc nous avons essayé et nous avons remarqué que cette loi n'est pas prise en compte dans la stratégie nationale de réduction des risques de catastrophes.
So they realized that this law was existing, but actually was not taking into account in the national risk reduction strategy.
C'est ainsi que nous avons mené une campagne de plaidoyer pour la prise en compte de cette loi sur le déplacement dans la stratégie nationale de prévention et de gestion des risques et catastrophes.
Realizing this, they started to have an advocacy campaign specifically for this law to be taken into account within the disaster risk reduction strategy.
Nous avons mené aussi des caravanes de sensibilisation pour que ces personnes déplacées arrivent à comprendre les avantages que la loi leur confère en tant que personnes déplacées.
We also create caravan of people around the country to really show and to make displaced people understand what this law could bring them positively, and so why they should also be advocating and supporting the campaign.
Nous avons mené aussi un plaidoyer pour la prise en compte des avis des personnes déplacées dans l'élaboration des lois et stratégies nationales.
In that context, they were also advocating for people's voice to be included in the elaboration of laws, specifically laws for displaced people, obviously.
Donc le chantier il est énorme, il y a beaucoup de choses à faire. C'est ainsi que nous lançons un appel pour que ces populations puissent avoir accès au minimum vital.
So challenges are huge, and much still need to happen. So he is now sending a call to help to support those people, to give them access to basic needs.
ne serait-ce que les abris décents, l'accès à l'eau potable, à la nourriture et aux soins primaires.
So by that he means water, food, health, scholarship,
Et l'éducation des enfants.
yeah, education.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. I thank you. Okay, I imagine now your head is full of information, gap solution, trends, all of that. So I don't know if anybody has a question. I know that people are following online, but I don't know how I can manage to get your question done, so I'm very sorry. So for people in the room, do you have any question, remarks, suggestions? Yes, so we have two. Sir. I'm just looking if we have a portative mic. It seems to, yes, no? Okay. It's a high-tech side event.
Thank you very much. Equally, thanking for the organizers and also my President SEC. What I ask for all the participants is to look at what are the sustainability plans for each of these schemes or experience that you have shared. It's important to see what sustainability plan has already been developed by all the different experiences that are already presented here. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Maybe you can give the mic to your neighbor so we can take both. And the panelists can already think about their answers. You choose if you want to answer or not.
Okay, thank you very much. I am Suleiman Ouattara from Burkina Faso. So I heard exactly what I wish to see, and now it's not about telling what, but what can we do? It is, we all know. That is exactly what she said. We all know, but how can we find solutions? And as Emmanuel said, to scale up these solutions to the population, to clean up this phase of injustice from west to south. I would simply want to notice that I'm part of an initiative by Enda Energy for Africa to speak one voice to this COP27. We are 8 countries, and I'm really glad to hear this analysis of social care in existence, of migrations, of refugees. This is what we see every day in our countries. And as an organization from the South, we wish you to help to scale up these solutions we are all looking for, and we want to see it alive, these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. You don't have a question?
No,
No.
I think we have to go forward.
Yeah. I
exactly.
totally agree with that.
Let's go forward.
Is there any more questions? So we can maybe take 2 or remarks, deep thinking. No, I don't see any. Regarding the sustainability plans that Mr. asked, if has anyone comments on that or views or Int, yeah, and then maybe Emmanuel? Or Emmanuel first?
Yeah, I will consider that as, in my understanding, as a contribution, but we can learn from that. We can learn from that in a way that what we are doing need to be rooted somewhere. I mean, in all our countries, if we go through the different strategies, the different policies, there is a key policy at the national level. For example, in Senegal, we have what we call Emerging Senegal Plan. So if we want at least to develop initiative, even at the local level, because at the local level there is some plan and some strategies. Someone have said it, I think, we need to integrate all those initiatives that we are developing. And to be sure that we have the communities take ownership of those initiatives. If not, it will be difficult to have the sustainability that we are expecting from these different initiatives. First, integrate, facilitate the ownership of the initiative by the community, take into account also their knowledge, because they have know-how, which is not very often considered when we are asking or providing solution. So to what Mr. Ouattara have said after Musa is clear. So we need to look at for more synergy and unifies our initiatives to at least look for more impact. Alone, it will be difficult for us to reach together, to reach something. But working together, as it's already said, we could go far.
I totally agree with that. Coming from a country who has 4 climate ministers, you cannot imagine how much I agree with coherence and synergies. Ind or Tetet, you wanted to pick up on that, or Ind, please? Not 5 minutes. I'm kidding.
No, I understood. Thank you, Tetet. I'm not sure I have the same understanding about the sustainability plans, but let's mention maybe a few tools. The Climate Vulnerable Fund that is chaired by Ghana is building up climate prosperity plans. I met the colleagues from the Secretariat in Dakar a few weeks ago, and definitely plans like the PSE, the Plan Sénégal Émergent, the Emergent Senegal Plan, and the synergy between such tools is very important, and again being able to build policies. I know that it can seem only words, but they need, if we do not have policies that are solution oriented, that are also people centered, because we do have also a lot of climate policies who do not take into consideration communities, and it's definitely a necessary first step. But we have also to act on all fronts, and definitely feeding policy plans with what is already going on the ground. So for example, urban and peri-urban agriculture are disappearing in our region, and we know that it plays a key role in terms of climate resilience towards floods, for example, but also in terms of food security, and migrants also work in these sectors. So definitely working on solutions to show the way, to also to say, it works, it can work, and it has already worked, can also inspire policymakers. So this is not an answer to cover all the solutions, but definitely this is a start, and also, facilitating the dialogue between the local level and the global level, and definitely, it's cross-fertilization, a very important one. So I will stop here, and definitely, I agree with all what was said by Tetet, and also by Mr. Ouattara from Burkina Faso. A lot of things remain to be done, and we need to be also here to repeat, and also to show concretely to the policymakers, to the decision makers, how it can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Tetet, you want to have the final word?
I think coming from the migrants communities themselves, I would like to think that there should be no sustainability plan because we do not want to normalize migration and displacement. Now, so, but seriously, I would also think that migrants and displaced communities are organizing themselves in order to better be represented in different spaces. You know, when they are able to grow and strengthen their own associations, migrants movements, then they can have the power, then they can have the capacity to engage constructively with decision makers, with policy makers, so that this can result in productive dialogues that would mean, better situations for them, resulting in social access to social protection services, basically realizing their human rights. Because we know that the problems are huge and the system is also very difficult to navigate. No one migrant or not one person can make a sustainable change for the better. But if migrants and displaced communities themselves come together, build power, then they can reclaim and have a voice in many of these spaces. So I would like to think organizing, education, awareness raising, that is the sustainability plan in order that displaced people and communities get to realize, their fundamental human rights.
Thank you. I think I will take that as a final word because we are almost running out of time. So I want really thank the speakers to give us the opportunity to bring people and people's stories within this COP, because I think we will talk a lot about loss and damage for the next days, weeks, years probably, but we need to really stick to what it's actually about. It's about negotiation, agenda items and all of that, cover decision probably, but it's also about people's life and solutions for the people. So I really thank you for this discussion. It's recorded, so don't hesitate to share it with your networks, because I think it was a lot of information, also good suggestions and propositions so that can be used in our daily work back at home, because the work doesn't stop just at the COP, right? So thank you for that. Thank you for the participation, and I wish you a good afternoon. Thank you.